We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, a podcast where we dive deep into the world of songwriting and music. Our guest today is none other than rock band Incubus. Having formed in the early 90s and remained a beloved staple of the alternative rock scene for the last 30 plus years, the group is currently celebrating the anniversary of their seminal album Morning View with a re-recording of the record aptly titled Morning View XXIII. To celebrate this new re-recording, the band is heading out on tour across the US in August and September of this year. Now, on today's episode, we've got the band's brand new bassist, Nicole Row, joining us to chat about Morning View XXIII. We discuss what it was like heading back into the studio to re-record some of these iconic songs and the process behind it. Nicole also shares how she got involved with Incubus in the first place and her journey from playing with artists like Miley Cyrus and Panic at the Disco to becoming a full-time member of the band. Plus, we talk about which song she's most looking forward to playing live when they perform the Morning View album in full all of this and next month. Now, we want to say a big thank you to Amy for her help with today's episode and remind everyone to grab tickets to Incubus's shows, purchase Morning View XXIII, and while you're at it, make sure you subscribe to this very podcast. All details for all three can be found in today's show notes. Now, let's jump into it. Here is our conversation with Nicole Row from Incubus.
Wish you were here. I wish you were.
Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Nicole Row from Incubus. Nicole, hello. How's it going?
Hi. I'm great. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to join us today and have a bit of a chat.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm very excited to be chatting with yourself. There's so much going on in the world of Incubus. I'm really not even sure where to kind of begin. I know that you're about to go on tour. We've called you just kind of at the tail end of rehearsal. There's been a new album that's come out this year. How are you feeling with all of these kind of things happening around you in the world of Incubus and Morning View XXIII?
It feels like it's all flying by, right? I'm super excited to get out on the road, just like everybody else is. And it feels like it's been almost about 1.5 to 2 years that we've been playing together now, which is crazy because it feels like it just started. We've just released something together, which is exciting, and we're making new stuff and hitting the road with things that we've re-recorded together. And it just feels like I jumped on to a traveling circus. Very fun.
Hopefully the best kind of circus, not like a...
Oh yeah, that's definitely a positive thing. Yeah.
I'd love to know for people who are listening who maybe aren't aware, as you mentioned, you're only somewhat new to the band the last 1.5 years or so. And I do want to kind of get into your musical history and your introduction to the band and everything in a little bit. But in terms of, as you said, re-recording the album, what was that kind of process like? As in, I feel like very few people in the world get to go back into the studio with a band with a very beloved album and get to recreate it with them. I imagine that must have been an experience unto itself. Yeah.
It was kind of a surprise actually to me. We were getting ready to go out on tour, one of my first tours with them, and I just remember we're sitting down and they're having a meeting, and he looks at me and he's like, "Nicole, are you down to track some bass for Morning View, for the re-record of Morning View?" And I was like, yeah. Is it a real question? Yes, I am. For an album that I grew up with, and I ended up doing a little bit of it on the road and like in green rooms and stuff. And then we got into the studio together and we got back, and did a couple of the other parts, and it was a little bit surreal because it was, just this wonderful little surprise of kind of traveling back in time into my childhood, and all these songs that I know really, really well, and trying to play them as they were recorded originally, to keep those textures and like all the things that people are attached to in the songs, me, myself, how the things I'm also attached to in the songs, and then also just put my own little touch on it, play the way I want to play and with my own sounds, and kind of merge the two. So it was an interesting goal.
I can imagine that. Yeah, there's probably like a number of emotions going through your mind as you're doing that, because as you just said, you're trying to pay homage and do right by the fans, and yourself being a fan, but also put your own take on it, your own spin on it. Was there any track off the record that you were kind of surprised at tackling, that you kind of thought, oh, this is going to be, how this kind of plays out, and it took you a different route?
The tunes that are a lot heavier and a lot of effect and pick playing, those tunes, that style is a little bit just not something that I frequent a lot in other things that I do. So those ones were really fun to track because it was something a little bit different than I'm used to doing, and kind of leaning into my angry side, just letting that flow. And then songs like Phase was really fun to record. Getting to do background vocals with B was really fun, and getting to kind of, as they say, like yacht over it a little bit, where, the original track is just very simple in the bass, and they let me play up as I wanted to on it. And that was really cool.
I absolutely love that. From all accounts that I've heard, I think in preparation for today, listening to some podcasts with yourself, reading some articles with other band members like Brandon, it seems like you've kind of fit into this family of, as you said, the kind of like traveling circus quite well. Yeah. That like it's just kind of melded. I think there was an article from Rolling Stone saying that you joining the band has almost opened up like a whole other universe for them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how I've altered their experience, but they seem happy, and we all really click, and we get along, and we have fun playing together, and we have fun creating together. They're a very easy bunch to spitball with, and just kind of jam around with. So, which is pretty lucky. It's not every campus like that for sure. So, but yeah, I hope that me coming on board has kind of given something fresh and different, because everybody, obviously, every player is going to come in and contribute something different. So I'm glad that they're liking what I'm bringing to the table for sure.
It's going well. It's going good for yourself. So yeah. How did it kind of come about? I know that you've been a touring bassist for a little while, and I would love to know, how does one kind of simply join a very well-known band? I believe the only thing I did find was that you did have the endorsement of Ben, I believe. Yeah. Which news to me. That was a surprise to me, and that was very heartwarming for me too. When they told me about that made me smile because he's amazing. He's the shit. So, he and I apparently are just familiar with each other on Instagram, social media, and stuff like that. And that's actually, I would say, probably the majority of how that happened, because I was playing with Panic at the Disco prior to these guys. And Mike reached out maybe the day of my final show with Panic, because as you know, Panic at the Disco came to an end as a band. And so Mike sent me a DM on Instagram, and I wasn't checking my requests because, if you don't follow somebody, it doesn't come to your messages. So they had their buddy who was friends with me. They had him send me a message and say, "Hey, check your inbox. Mike's trying to reach out to you." And me and Mike had this really dumb, hilarious exchange with each other, just saying "What's good? What's up?" It was very silly. And and they just
they just hit me up and asked if I would just come through and meet them, essentially. Trying to hide some sound. They asked me if I would just come jam. And I had to fly in. Actually, I was in Washington, so I flew in a few days after my tour. I was all jet lagged, and I rolled in here with a bass. And Mike looks at me and he goes, "So, do you know any of our tunes?" And I just giggled. I was like, "Yes, everyone knows these songs for sure." And we just jammed all the hits, and we made some stupid jokes, and the rest was history for sure.
I absolutely love that. It does sound like you've kind of clicked almost instantly, or it's almost like what's the word?
Yeah.
The kismet? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It felt that way. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I would love to know for yourself. I know that you mentioned Panic. I believe you've played bass with artists like Miley Cyrus. I think our very own Troye Sivan from Australia.
Yeah.
How did you get into playing bass, and how did you get into kind of like this musical world?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So how do I even start? I just moved. I was trying to get out of Fresno, and I played the bass, and I moved to LA. Very classic story. And my first couple years was just education and making connections and getting involved in the music scene. And I picked up a tour with a very, new young artist, Dave Stewart's daughter, Kaya, from the Eurythmics, that guy. And it's really just kind of a simple story of, I kind of put in my time. I did van tours for a while with different artists, and then every tour would just be a step up, in everything. So it went from that to Troy, worked with Dea, and then with Miley and, a couple other artists. And I just ended up in the tour ring. I was just one of the calls that people would recommend. And as that goes, there's different circles in the music industry. And I got lucky enough to be in that one, because touring is obviously the most fun thing ever. And then kind of carried on like that. I started playing bass. My brother was a drummer. And in Fresno, there's nothing else to do, honestly, than play music. And we just sort of started playing in garage bands and hardcore scenes and whatever was available. And so that was my thing. I just played a bunch of different instruments when I was starting at like a very young age with the piano, and messed with the guitar and sang and, all that stuff. And the bass was just the instrument that I picked up, where it's like the natural instrument for my body and soul.
Mm-hmm. No, look, that's very fair. I think for a lot of people we've spoken to on this podcast, when it comes to songwriting and playing music, it is that sometimes it's just, it's I hate to use the word kismet again, but it's almost like the destiny kind of thing, that sometimes the instrument is just, it chooses you in terms of what works best, what feels right, and what kind of plays the best in a way.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a sensation, really. It's sort of what it feels like. It's the unique experience, jumping from like a different instrument and landing on one that's just a little bit more satisfying.
Yes. Yeah. It's super exciting as well, because Incubus is taking Morning View XXIII out onto the road the middle of this month in August. Super exciting, playing the album in full and playing some extra hits. I think that I think there's also shows, is it Madison Square Garden you're playing as well?
Yeah.
For this one?
Oh yeah. I'm super excited
Crazy.
for that, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
What's it like? I know that you guys have been on the road for a little while now. I think you're actually with us in Australia earlier this year. What's it like then kind of taking this album out in full and kind of having to, I guess, recreate essentially the whole album on stage? Does that kind of prove different challenges instead of like a normal tour?
I think the initial assumption is that it would, but when we played it at the Hollywood Bowl, feels like yesterday, but I'm sure it was a long time ago. When we played it, it went over so smoothly, and it was so much fun. Specifically for the audience, you know what I mean? Like the tickets just sold so fast, and everybody in the crowd was, all ages and just like knew what the next song was going to be. Just play the album through, you know what I mean? And so it was just for people like of a certain age who listen to like records, through and through, like from the start to finish, rather than like streaming music individually by song. And I think it was a really, really fun show because you're kind of anticipating the next song. Do you know what I mean? If you listen to a CD or whatever you're listening to through and through, you kind of, something that you love, you know exactly what's next and you're ready and you're excited, and it's like the anticipation, and it's a whole, theatrical experience. And I think it really just like kind of carried itself through. We didn't really have to put any extra effort into it.
I imagine with a band like Incubus as well, who are quite well known for being very fluid musically in terms of it's not too rigid, it's not played to a track, but also like that there's a sense of jamming, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Was that kind of the way that you found it as well, playing these songs in the album, that there was like a bit more openness? There's allowances almost for playing around with the arrangements and how it kind of plays.
Yes, the album, and also these guys, this band, they very much appreciate that. Obviously playing for the song is important, but with Mikey, he loves to lean in and just kind of interpret and play and like have a good time and feel the moment, so there's definitely always room for whatever you're hearing, for sure, on stage especially too. Yeah,
I absolutely love that. As a young man who spent his teenage years in the early 2000s, Morning View was a very special album to my heart, so I'm very stoked to be talking about it today.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite song?
Selfishly, you picked where I was going to go. Warning for me was always a favorite. Of
course. Yeah, that was like Warning. A staple for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I'm curious for yourself, both from the record and then I guess in that live arena when on tour, do you have a favorite track from the record? And then do you have a favorite track to play when you're playing the record? And are they the same maybe?
I'd say, Warning was a huge one for me. I remember when I first started playing with them and Warning wasn't on the set list, and I was super bummed. Where's this song? I love this song. So that one for sure is a big like listening experience for me. To play, the one that's really been sticking with me from this album, from our previous tours, is Nice to Know You. I love playing that one. It's energetically really fun. And lately it's been Blood on the Ground. It's just so, I like right when he starts singing at the top of the song, nothing else is happening. And I want to sing so badly. I want to like yell on the side of the stage. I love playing that one. Yeah.
It is, I imagine, just such a fun album to be able to kind of recreate and play, I think, especially for a bassist on, what is it, like tracks like Circles as well. I imagine that's kind of one that really flexes the muscles of what you're doing. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's, it took me a second to kind of chase down that sound, because I came from playing more, some edgier pop stuff with Panic, and then some soul stuff in my like more personal experience, and like funk, things like that. So coming into this, it was sort of like that like Warwick, angry, like heavy, like almost slap picking, fucking bass tone. And so, which is, I play so soft, my action is super low, I play really delicately, so it was sort of like a wait a sec, let me like revamp and see how I can kind of get to this sound over here. So that's been really fun for me. But yeah, it's like such an important part of the sound of that whole album. I mean, the bass is so hot in the original record of that. Yeah. I'm very excited to kind of see these shows and see how they play out, because I imagine we're here in Australia, so not even in the same country, but very excited about those shows. So I can only imagine the palpable excitement of people over in the States who are attending. We're going to make sure that we have all the links and ticket details in the podcast show notes for people to be able to access and buy. I am curious, and I don't want to get anyone into trouble. Obviously, we've got Morning View 23 this year. You are going out on tour. I know in that same interview that where Brandon said that that you fit in like family, that I think there was, what was the quote? There was something about the momentum that you've brought to the band has inspired them to start writing new music. Can we expect any form of update this year, maybe, on anything new from Incubus?
I would love to be able to answer that. I'm not sure what is. It's all just sort of taking its own shape right now. I'm very excited about the things that we've created. They're all awesome, and I don't know what the plan is as far as when or where or how anyone will be receiving it. But I know that it's on the way. We're all just kind of, figuring out what we want the process to be in the time, for right now, for the rest of the summer.
Look, we will gladly take the fact that there's something.
There's something. I
being
promise
able to
there's
take
something.
a shape is 100%. We'll gladly take that and roll with that for the time being in anticipation.
Yeah.
It has been such a delight to chat to you today, Nicole. Usually we kind of wrap things up asking, I guess, what they're currently listening to. For yourself, is there anything at the moment on high rotation?
High rotation, like my top Spotify. It's so funny. It really is not what you'd expect. It's still a lot of PJ Morton, Alan Stone, Erykah Badu, D'Angelo.
A lot of funky stuff there.
Yeah. It's just like all the things that, like pre-show, I like to listen to things like that. It's very weird. I'll turn on like soulful R&B stuff, and I just kind of want to sink into this slow, groovy place. And for some reason, no matter what I'm about to play, that stuff like sends me out and, into a pocket for some weird reason. And that's what I listen to on my spare time.
I absolutely love that, though. I think that kind of, not, as you said, somewhat unexpected, but it also kind of makes sense. I imagine that, as mentioned before, the fluidity of Incubus and how that kind of works. I imagine that there's elements of soul, R&B, jazz, as you said, like D'Angelo, kind of like melting pots of sounds that kind of help go into this as well. So I absolutely love that. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Of course.
As mentioned, Incubus are going on tour in August and through September, playing Morning View XXIII. Nicole, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and chatting to us. Very much appreciate it, and super excited to see how the tour goes.
Yeah, me too. And thank you so much. That was super fun.
The most powerful designer drugs are the digital ones we use daily. And we get high off them. One touch, tap, like, scroll at a time. Just like tech creators want us to. Use digital without digital using you. Learn more at sync.ithra.com.